Hey class, it's Mr. Rodrigo Diaz Coloma, and obviously you have the substitute teacher there who will be going over the lesson plan. And our lesson plan will be Operation Iraqi Freedom. So you'll see the interviews between Gunnar Sean Jackman and Stasson Addis. Um, those interviews were one-on-one that I interviewed those Marines, talking about their combat experience and their deployment to Iraq. Also, the substitute will give you articles and timelines along with maps about the Iraq War, and in that you'll get to see what how the war led up to it and what happened during it and afterwards. So as you can see with the PowerPoint, March 19th, President Bush wants Saddam and his regime to leave Iraq, and then it didn't happen. So March 20th, 148,000 American and 45,000 British troops invaded Iraq. April 12th, U.S. forces secured Baghdad, and the statue of Saddam is toppled. As you can see, this is the map of the Iraqi war. Um, all the troops primarily came from Kuwait up up north to eventually Baghdad. There were some troops from Turkey that flew in. That was the 82nd Airborne Division from the Army. So there are a lot of Army and Marines that went into Iraq. As you can see, the battles of Najif, Fallujah, Ramadi, all were basically important wars, battles within the war. As you can see, the legend talk about the main axis of advance with those dates. The coalition forces and the operation names like Operation Red Dawn, Steel Curtain, Arrowhead Ripper. These are all campaigns within the war. So the Iraq timelines for the invasion of Iraq. As you can see, the start of Operation Iraqi Freedom with airstrikes on Baghdad, invasion of southern Iraq from Kuwait by U.S. and British troops. 26 March, you have the opening northern front by U.S. troops. 5 April, you have the U.S. troops enter Baghdad. 1 April, U.S. President Bush declares end to major combat operations. 13 December, Saddam Hussein captured near Tikrit. That was near a hometown of his. 10 April, U.S. actions against radical Shiite movement led by al-Sadr. 7 November, start a major offensive against insurgents in Fallujah. And 30 January, you have your first democratic elections held in Iraq. So obviously, the first 6 months were big campaigns to take over Iraq, and afterward, it was a big deal to start getting the government of Iraq going. As you can see, there down below near Basra was the British military zone, and within the middle to the top of Iraq were all U.S. military zones. During the first 6 months, President Bush decided to announce mission accomplishment, but long and behold, he did not know that just because on May 1st he declared mission accomplishment, there needed to be a government, and soon after that, um, he needed to establish all kinds of not military law but civil law, because you had a lot of riots and you had a lot of break-ins, you had a lot of chaos within the country because there was no government. So President Bush declares U.S. military takes down Saddam's government is a victory for war on terror. basically a major issue and major circumstances surrounding this war were terrorists, and that Iraq was harboring terrorists. December 13, 2004, U.S. forces captured Saddam, like we were saying before. December 2005, millions of Iraqis vote to elect a full-term government and parliament. As you can see, more in depth and more detail within the map of Iraq. I can tell you firsthand knowledge that I was deployed to Iraq 3 different occasions, 3 different tours, all with 7 months each. And I was in a airbase called Al Assad from February to July 2003. Within that airbase, it really wasn't an airbase. And when we got there, it was a big strip of concrete that allowed military helicopters to come in. But we set up camp there. Like if you were to see MASH, or you were to see different military with tents and in the defense, that was us. As you can see in the articles that we'll be handing out, more on the timeline and more detail. You can also have the substitute show you more in depth about different battles within the war, and where American British troops were at. British forces protected the oil refineries at Basra and Ruba. Basically, Saddam wanted to destroy the oil refineries, because that was the first line of offense for him, but it was the first line of defense for us. There were a lot of reasons why we invaded Iraq. Basically, we invaded Iraq. So the handout of Resolution 1441, you'll see that that 1441 was basically the UN and international peace and security wanted Iraq to give up their nuclear weapons and to look at their long range weapons of mass destruction. So the weapons inspector Hans Blix told UN security that Iraq did not fully account for weapons of mass destruction and biological weapons. Saddam was harboring terrorist group Al Qaeda within Iraq, and oil protection was a possible option, but Iraq needed oil for reconstruction. So as you know, every country needs some type of oil for their gas and for their homes and things like that. So we needed to protect the oil fields for Iraq as well. So Saddam was not complying with the UN treaty and UN security in terms of allowing the U.S. and other countries to come in and inspect, because we had a viable idea that they were not complying with the sanctions. The cost of war, as you can see, we spent millions and billions and billions and trillions of dollars in an unstable Middle East to fight the war on terrorism. Throughout the presentation, you have seen that that the war cost on human life and with money, along with the worksheets and the handouts that I give you on the articles. So in summary, you need to work on your assessment quiz and journal essay, and the substitute will give you more in-depth information on that. Please return the worksheets and journal to the substitute teacher so it can be graded. Within that, you'll see how you can get a better quiz grade on your assessment.